The stars were quiet that night. Admiral Jake Morrison stood alone on the observation deck of the USS Defiance, watching the endless darkness stretch before him. 300 years had passed since humanity left the Galactic Coalition. 300 years of silence. 300 years of building, growing, and waiting. Jake was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had served in the Earth Defense Fleet for 40 years. He had seen wars, peace, and everything in between. But tonight, something felt different. The universe seemed to be holding its breath. The door behind him opened with a soft hiss. Commander Lisa Park walked in, her boots clicking against the metal floor. She was his second in command, a brilliant woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. "Admiral, we have a problem," she said. Jake did not turn around. "What kind of problem?" "A signal, sir. Our long-range sensors picked it up about an hour ago. It is old. Very old. And it is using coalition frequencies." Now Jake turned. His eyes narrowed. "Coalition frequencies? We have not heard those in 3 centuries. "I know, sir. That is why I came to you directly." They walked together to the bridge. The USS Defiance was the flagship of the 7th Armada, the most powerful battle group in human history. It carried weapons that the old coalition could not even imagine. But more importantly, it carried people who believed in something greater than themselves. The bridge was busy with activity. Officers moved between stations, checking data and running calculations. At the communications console, Michael Torres was working frantically. He was young, barely 30, but he was the best communications officer in the fleet. "Show me the signal," Jake ordered. Michael pressed a few buttons. The main screen filled with static, then cleared to show a waveform pattern. Numbers scrolled across the bottom of the display. "It is definitely coalition in origin," Michael said. "The encryption is 300 years old. It took me a while to decode it. Play it." The speakers crackled. Then a voice came through, broken and desperate. It spoke in the common galactic language, a tongue humanity had not used in a very long time. "To any human vessels, this is a priority 1 distress call. The Devour Swarm has returned. Our fleets are broken. Our worlds are burning. We remember your warriors. We remember your courage. Please, we beg for aid." The message repeated, then faded into static. Silence fell over the bridge. Everyone stared at the screen, processing what they had just heard. Lisa was the first to speak. "The Valorans." That signal came from the Valoran homeworld. Jake felt something cold settle in his chest. The Valorans. He remembered reading about them in the history files. They were an ancient species, proud and powerful. They had been among the loudest voices against humanity joining the Coalition Council. They had called humans primitive. They had called humans dangerous. They had called humans unworthy. And now they were begging for help. Captain Marcus Cole stepped forward. He was the head of intelligence, a quiet man who saw patterns where others saw chaos. "Admiral, I have been analyzing the signal. It is genuine. The Valorans would never fake something like this. They are too proud. What do we know about this Devour Swarm?" Jake asked. Marcus pulled up data on his tablet. The swarm was a legend even in our time with the Coalition. A species of biological ships, controlled by a single hive mind. They consume everything in their path. Entire civilizations have fallen to them. The Coalition thought they had destroyed the swarm 1,000 years ago. Apparently, they were wrong. Lieutenant Emma Wright looked up from her station. She was the youngest officer on the bridge, just 25 years old, but she had earned her place through skill and dedication. "Admiral, permission to speak freely?" "Granted. Why should we help them?" "The Coalition abandoned us. They laughed at us. They said we would destroy ourselves. Why should we risk our lives for people who treated us like dirt? It was a fair question. Jake could see the same thought in the eyes of his crew. 300 years of isolation had not erased the memories of rejection and humiliation. Jake walked to the center of the bridge. He looked at each of his officers in turn. These were good people. Strong people. They deserved an honest answer. 300 years ago, he began, humanity went to the stars hoping to find friends. We found species that had existed for millions of years. Species with technology we could barely understand. And what did they see when they looked at us? Children. Dangerous children who would probably destroy themselves before their next century. He paused, gathering his thoughts. They were not entirely wrong. We were young. We were reckless. We made mistakes. But we also had something they did not understand. We had heart. We formed bonds with strangers. We fought for people we had never met. We carried hope into the darkness, even when that darkness seemed endless. Jake turned to look at the stars through the viewport. The Valorans rejected us because they were afraid of what we represented. Change, unpredictability, passion. They could not control us, so they pushed us away. And for 300 years, we have been alone. He turned back to face his crew. But being alone taught us something important. It taught us who we really are. We are not warriors because we love violence. We are warriors because we love what we protect. Our families, our friends, our future. He pointed at the screen, where the distress signal still flickered. Out there, right now, children are dying. Mothers are losing their sons. Fathers are watching their worlds burn. And they have no one left to call except the species they rejected 3 centuries ago. His voice grew stronger. We could ignore them. We could let them face the consequences of their arrogance. No one would blame us. But that is not who we are. That is not what humanity stands for. We do not help others because they deserve it. We help them because it is right. Emma lowered her eyes. I understand, Admiral. Jake nodded. Michael, open a channel to Earth Command. Priority 1. Yes, sir. Within minutes, the face of Fleet Admiral Thomas Reed appeared on the screen. He was an old man, even older than Jake, with a face carved from decades of service and sacrifice. Jake, I received your preliminary report. You want to take the 7th Armada into Coalition space? Yes, sir. The Valorans are facing extinction. The entire Coalition might fall if we do not act. Thomas was silent for a long moment. Then he smiled, a small and tired smile. I never thought I would live to see this day. The galaxy that rejected us, calling for our help. He straightened in his chair. You have authorization, Admiral. Take the 7th Armada. Show them what humanity has become. And Jake, sir, bring our people home. The channel closed. Jake turned to his crew. You heard the man. All hands, prepare for warp. Navigator Rachel Adams, plot a course for Valoran space. Rachel, a calm woman with steady hands, worked her console. Course plotted, Admiral. 18 days at maximum warp. Lisa, signal the fleet. All ships are to form up on the Defiance. We leave in 1 hour. Yes, sir. As the bridge erupted into organized chaos, Jake stood still for a moment. He thought about the generations of humans who had looked at the stars and wondered if they were alone. He thought about the pioneers who had built the first ships, the soldiers who had fought the first battles, the dreamers who had refused to give up. The galaxy had forgotten about humanity. They had assumed the strange emotional species from the small blue planet had destroyed itself. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The legendary Armada was coming, and the universe would never be the same. On the Valoran homeworld, chaos ruled the streets. Ships filled with refugees launched every hour, desperate to escape the coming storm. The sky, once filled with beautiful purple clouds, was now dark with smoke from burning cities. Elder Matriarch Sylvan stood in the High Council chamber, watching the destruction through a tall window. She was ancient, even by Valoran standards. Her silver skin had dulled with age, and her 4 eyes carried the weight of centuries. She had lived through wars, plagues, and disasters. But nothing had prepared her for this. "Matriarch," a young aide said, approaching carefully, "we have received a response to our distress signal." Sylvan did not turn around. "Which species answered? The Kulvathi? The Mendari?" "No, Matriarch. The humans." Now she turned. Her eyes widened with something she had not felt in a very long time. Surprise. "The humans? That is impossible. The humans are extinct." "Apparently not, Matriarch. Their transmission came from beyond the outer rim. They said they are coming." Sylvan walked to her chair and sat down heavily. Memories flooded her mind. Memories of a different time, 300 years ago, when a young species had come to the Coalition seeking friendship. She remembered the human ambassador, a woman named Catherine Bell. She had been small by human standards, with brown hair and green eyes that burned with determination. She had spoken before the Coalition Council with passion and hope, asking for nothing more than a chance to prove humanity's worth. The Council had refused, not because humans were weak, but because they were too strong in ways the Coalition could not understand. Humans formed bonds too quickly. They adapted too fast. They felt emotions too deeply. The ancient species of the Coalition had spent millions of years learning to control themselves, to suppress their feelings in favor of logic. Humans seemed to do the opposite. They embraced their emotions and used them as fuel. It was terrifying. Sylvan remembered the final day. Catherine Bell had stood before the council one last time. Her voice had been calm, but her eyes had been filled with sadness. "We came to the stars seeking friends," she had said. "We found only those who saw us as lesser. Very well, we will walk our own path. And when darkness comes for you, pray we still remember mercy." The council had laughed. Humans barely had faster than light travel. Their weapons were primitive. Their ships were small. What could they possibly do? Then the humans had gone silent. Their signals stopped. Their ships vanished. The Coalition sent scouts to Earth space, but they found nothing. Just empty stations and abandoned colonies. The common belief was that humanity had destroyed itself in some civil war. It was the fate everyone had predicted for such a violent and emotional species. But now, 300 years later, they had answered. Sylvan wondered what kind of humanity would emerge from the darkness. Had the centuries changed them? Had they grown cold like the Coalition? Or had they remained the strange, passionate creatures that had frightened the galaxy so long ago? Far away, aboard the USS Defiance, the human fleet prepared for its journey. The ship hummed with energy as engineers ran final checks and soldiers organized their equipment. In the medical bay, Dr. Amanda Foster studied data on her screen. She was the chief medical officer, a woman of 50 with gentle hands and a sharp mind. What she was reading made her blood run cold. "Admiral Morrison," she said into her communicator, "you need to see this." Jake arrived a few minutes later. He looked tired but alert, ready for whatever challenge came next. "What do you have, Doctor?" Amanda pointed at her screen. Intelligence gathered data on the Devourer swarm from old Coalition records. "I have been analyzing their biological structure. Admiral, they are not just killing civilizations. They are absorbing them." "Explain." "The swarm is a hive mind. Billions of organisms controlled by a single consciousness. When they consume a species, they take more than just their bodies. They take their knowledge, their memories, their genetic code. Every species they destroy makes them stronger, smarter, more adaptable. Jake stared at the data. How many species have they consumed? Based on the records? At least 17. Possibly more. The Coalition thought they destroyed the swarm 1,000 years ago, but it seems they only wounded it. The swarm retreated into deep space to heal, to grow, and now it has returned, stronger than ever. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. This was not just an enemy. This was a predator that evolved with every kill. Fighting it would be like fighting a mirror that learned from your every move. Thank you, Doctor. Share this information with the tactical team. He left the medical bay and walked through the ship. Everywhere he looked, he saw his crew preparing for battle. Young faces filled with determination. Old veterans checking their weapons one last time. Humanity had changed in 300 years, but some things remained the same. The courage, the loyalty, the willingness to fight for something greater than themselves. In the engineering bay, Chief Engineer David Stone was working on something large covered by a sheet. David was a big man with rough hands and a brilliant mind. He had designed half of the weapons on the Defiance himself. What is that? Jake asked. David pulled off the sheet, revealing a massive cannon unlike anything Jake had seen before. This, Admiral, is the Novolance, my life's work. What does it do? David smiled like a proud father. It creates a chain reaction in organic matter. One shot, and anything biological within 1,000 meters starts to burn from the inside out. I designed it specifically for enemies that adapt to conventional weapons. Like the swarm. Exactly like the swarm. The problem is the delivery system. The lance has to be fired at very close range. Less than 500 meters from the target. Jake frowned. That is suicide range. I know. I am still working on a solution. Jake patted David on the shoulder. Keep working. We might need that weapon before this is over. He continued his walk through the ship, ending up at the fighter bay. Rows of small, deadly ships stood ready for launch. Pilots moved between them, running checks and making repairs. Lieutenant Commander Jason Black approached and saluted. He was the leader of the Hellcats, the most elite fighter squadron in the fleet. He had dark skin, bright eyes, and a reputation for doing the impossible. Admiral, my pilots are ready. Good. What do you know about the swarm's fighters? They are biological ships, sir. Organic weapons, organic shields. They adapt quickly but react slowly to unexpected tactics. My plan is to keep them confused. Random patterns, unpredictable attacks. Human pilots do not think like machines. That is our advantage. Jake nodded. The swarm is a hive mind. They think as one. Exactly. But we think as many. Every pilot in my squadron has their own style, their own instincts. The swarm will not be able to predict us. This was what made humanity special, Jake realized. They were chaos. They were creativity. They were a million different minds working toward a common goal, but never in the same way. The Coalition had seen this as a weakness. They were about to learn it was humanity's greatest strength. The days passed slowly as the fleet traveled through the darkness between stars. Jake spent most of his time studying reports and planning strategies. He slept little and ate less. The weight of what they were about to do pressed down on him constantly. On the 15th day, Lisa Park called him to the bridge. Admiral, we are receiving transmissions from Coalition space. Show me. The screen filled with images of destruction. Planets burning. Stations crumbling. Ships exploding in the void. The swarm was moving faster than anyone had predicted. How many systems have fallen? Jake asked quietly. 17 in the last week alone. The Coalition defense fleet is retreating toward Valorum Prime for a final stand. They have maybe 40 ships left, And the swarm? Lisa hesitated. Our estimates say over 8,000 bioships, Admiral, with more arriving every day. 8,000 against 40. It was not a battle. It was an execution. Jake looked at his crew. They had all seen the numbers. They all knew what they were flying into. But not a single one showed fear. Only determination. How long until we reach Valoran space? 3 days, Admiral. Jake straightened his uniform. Then we have 3 days to prepare. Signal all ships. I want every weapon loaded, every shield calibrated, every pilot briefed. When we arrive, we hit them hard and we hit them fast. The galaxy forgot about humanity. It is time we reminded them who we are. The 7th Armada continued its journey through the stars. Behind them lay 300 years of silence. Ahead of them lay a battle that would determine the fate of the galaxy. And in the hearts of every human on those ships burned a fire that had never gone out. Hope. Admiral Vexinar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Pride of Corvus, watching his tactical display with empty eyes. He was a Carvathy, a species known for their logic and calm thinking. But even his famous self-control was breaking under the weight of despair. 43 ships. That was all that remained of the mighty coalition defense fleet. 43 ships against thousands of swarm bioships that surrounded the Valoran homeworld like a dark cloud. The math was simple. In a few hours, maybe a day at most, the coalition would cease to exist. His communications officer turned from her console. Admiral, the swarm is beginning its final approach. They will reach weapon range in approximately 3 hours. Vexinar nodded slowly. Signal all ships. Tell them to prepare for the end. We will make our last stand here. Perhaps our sacrifice will buy the civilian transports time to escape. It was a small hope. The swarm was everywhere. Even if some ships managed to run, they would be hunted down eventually. The galaxy was falling, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. Then his sensor officer made a strange sound. Something between confusion and disbelief. Admiral, I am detecting energy signatures at the edge of the system. More swarm reinforcements? No, sir. These signatures are different. Unknown configuration. Very powerful. One count over 200 contacts. Vexinar felt his heart beat faster. Can you identify them? Scanning now, sir. They are using some kind of stealth technology. I cannot get clear readings. Wait. They are decloaking. The main screen changed to show the new arrivals. Ships emerged from nothing, appearing like ghosts in the void. They were unlike anything Vexinar had ever seen. Sleek and deadly, with weapon systems that glowed with strange energy. The largest ship led the formation, a massive vessel that dwarfed even his flagship. What species builds ships like that? Someone whispered. Then a transmission came through. All frequencies, all languages. A human voice filled the bridge. This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the United Earth Defense Fleet. Vexinar felt his blood turn cold. Humans. The humans were alive. 300 years ago. You told humanity we were not worthy of standing beside you. 300 years ago, you told us we were alone in the universe. You were wrong on both counts. The human's voice was calm but carried an edge of steel. To the coalition forces, fall back to our lines. We will cover your retreat. To the Devour Swarm, you have made one critical error. You threatened the galaxy, and the galaxy called humanity for help. You wanted to devour everything? Let's see you devour this. The human fleet opened fire. Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the Defiance as quantum disruption cannons tore through the first wave of swarm bioships. Each shot created a small hole in reality itself, erasing matter at the most basic level. The swarm vessels did not explode. They simply ceased to exist. Enemy formations breaking apart, Lisa Park reported. They were not expecting this level of firepower. Keep up the pressure. All ships advance and fire at will. The 7th Armada moved like a single organism. 200 ships working in perfect coordination, their weapons creating a wall of destruction that the swarm could not penetrate. In the first 5 minutes alone, over 100 bioships were destroyed, but the swarm was vast. For every ship that fell, 2 more took its place. The hive mind began to adapt, analyzing the human weapons and restructuring its forces. "Admiral, swarm bioships are changing formation," Michael Torres reported. "They are focusing their attacks on specific ships. They are learning our weak points." Jake had expected this. "Signal Chief Engineer Stone. Tell him to activate Protocol Omega." Deep in the engineering bay, David Stone smiled and pressed a button. "Let them learn this," he muttered. Across the fleet, weapon systems began cycling through different configurations. Every 30 seconds, the frequency, the energy type, and the impact pattern changed completely. The swarm tried to adapt, but before it could adjust to one weapon type, humanity had already switched to another. The hive mind screamed in frustration. This enemy was unlike anything it had consumed before. They did not fight like the logical species of the Coalition. They did not follow predictable patterns. Every human ship seemed to have its own style, its own approach. It was chaos. Beautiful, deadly chaos. Lieutenant Commander Jason Black led his Hellcats into the heart of the battle. His fighter twisted through the maze of bioships, his weapons cutting down enemies with surgical precision. "Hellcat 2, on your left," he shouted. "I see them, boss." Taking evasive action. The fighter squadron moved like dancers, each pilot anticipating the others without needing commands. They had trained together for years, knew each other's habits and instincts. The swarm's hive mind could not predict individual human creativity. It was like trying to catch water with bare hands. On the bridge of the Defiance, Jake watched the battle unfold. They were winning, but the cost was high. 2 human ships had fallen already, destroyed by concentrated swarm attacks. Hundreds of good people, gone in an instant. "Admiral," Emma called out. "The Coalition fleet is requesting instructions. They want to know where to position." Jake looked at the tactical display. The Coalition ships were barely functional, their crews exhausted and demoralized. They had been fighting alone for too long. They had lost hope. It was time to give them some back. "Open a channel to Admiral Vexenar." The Corvavi's face appeared on screen. His eyes were wide with disbelief, his usual calm completely shattered. "Admiral Morrison, we did not believe. We thought you were extinct. We get that a lot. Listen carefully, Admiral. Pull your ships behind our lines. Protect the civilian transports and provide cover for our medical vessels. We will handle the swarm. You cannot possibly defeat them alone. There are too many." Jake smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Admiral, 300 years ago, the Coalition called humanity primitive. You said our weapons were toys. You said our strategies were emotional nonsense. Well, we have had 3 centuries to improve. Trust me when I say, we have been waiting for this fight our entire existence." The channel closed. Vexenar stared at the blank screen for a long moment, then turned to his crew. "You heard the human. Fall back. Let them do what they came to do." The Coalition fleet retreated behind human lines. For the first time in weeks, their shields stopped taking hits. For the first time in weeks, they had a moment to breathe. On the Valoran homeworld, Elder Matriarch Sylvan watched the battle from her command center. Tears rolled down her silver cheeks. Tears that Valorans were not supposed to be able to produce. "They came," she whispered. "After everything we did, they came." Her aide stood beside her, equally shocked. "The humans fight like nothing I have ever seen. They are reckless, unpredictable. It should not work, and yet, they are winning. Sylvan wiped her eyes. We called them primitive because we did not understand them. We saw their emotions as weakness. But look at them now. They are not fighting because they have to. They are fighting because they choose to. Because they believe in something. The battle raged for hours. The swarm kept sending reinforcements, but humanity kept destroying them. The space around Valoran Prime became a graveyard of bioship remains. Then, suddenly, the swarm stopped attacking. What is happening? Lisa asked, scanning her console. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. They are planning something. The hive mind is regrouping. Rachel Adams looked up from her navigation station, her face pale. Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting something massive approaching. It is coming from the other side of the system. Energy readings are off the charts. Show me. The screen changed to show a distant shape. At first, Jake thought it was a small moon. Then he realized it was moving. It was alive. What in God's name is that? Marcus Cole answered, his voice barely above a whisper. The Swarm Mother. She is the heart of the hive mind. Every bioship in existence is connected to her. According to legend, she has consumed 17 civilizations over 10,000 years. She has never been defeated. The Swarm Mother continued her approach. As she came closer, details became visible. She was not just large. She was a living weapon, covered in biological cannons and protected by organic shields that pulsed with stolen energy. Admiral, Lisa said quietly, if that thing reaches the planet, nothing will survive. Jake stared at the monster on his screen. This was why the swarm had retreated. They were making room for their queen. Then, we will not let her reach the planet, Jake said. All ships, prepare for Phase 2. We are going to kill that thing. Michael Torres hesitated. Sir, our weapons cannot penetrate her shields. Nothing in our arsenal is strong enough. Jake thought of David Stone and his secret weapon. The Nova Lance, a weapon that could destroy anything organic. A weapon that required point-blank range to fire. Get me Chief Engineer Stone, Jake ordered. I had a plan. It was a terrible plan. It would probably kill them all. But humanity had not come this far to turn back now. The legendary Armada regrouped and faced the approaching horror. Behind them, the Coalition watched in wonder. These strange, emotional creatures from a small blue planet were about to do the impossible, or die trying. The Swarm Mother moved through space like a nightmare given form. Her body stretched for kilometers, covered in weapons that had destroyed entire civilizations. Her organic shields glowed with energy stolen from 17 consumed species. She was death incarnate, and she was coming for Valoran Prime. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiance, studying the monster on his screen. Behind him, his crew waited in tense silence. They had all seen the data. They all knew what they were facing. Chief Stone, Jake said into his communicator, is the Nova Lance ready? David's voice came back, tired but determined. Ready as it will ever be, Admiral. But sir, I have to warn you again. The lance needs to be fired at close range. Anyone who delivers that weapon is not coming back. I understand. Jake turned to face his crew. These people had served with him for years. They had become more than colleagues. They were family. Listen to me carefully, he said. I am going to take the Defiance in alone. The rest of the fleet will provide cover and protect the evacuations. Once we fire the Nova Lance, the Swarm Mother will die, and the hive mind will collapse. Lisa Parks stood from her station. Admiral, no. There has to be another way. There's not. The Nova Lance is our only weapon that can penetrate her shields, and it requires someone to get close enough to deliver it. I will not ask anyone else to make that sacrifice. Then, you are not asking, Emerite said, returning to her console. You are ordering. And I am refusing to follow that order. Jake blinked. Lieutenant, this is not a democracy. No, sir, it is not. But you cannot fly this ship alone. You need a navigator, a communications officer, a tactical team. And we are not leaving. One by one, the bridge crew returned to their stations. Michael Torres, Rachel Adams, everyone. They looked at their admiral. With eyes full of determination, Jake felt something tighten in his chest. Pride, love, fear. All mixed together into something he could not name. You understand this is likely a one-way trip, he said. Quietly. We understand, Lisa replied. But Admiral, you said something earlier. You said we help others because it is right. Well, this is right. We are humans. We do not send our leaders to die alone. Jake wanted to argue. He wanted to order them off the ship. But looking at their faces, he knew it would be useless. This crew had made their choice. Very well, he said finally. All hands, prepare for final approach. The Defiance broke formation and accelerated toward the Swarm Mother. Behind them, the rest of the 7th Armada moved to engage the surrounding bioships, trying to draw their attention away from the flagship. Lieutenant Commander Jason Black led his Hellcats in a desperate charge. All fighters, cover the Defiance. Do not let anything get close to her. The small fighters swarmed around the flagship like protective guardians. They shot down bioships that tried to intercept, sacrificing themselves one by one to buy the Defiance precious time. On the bridge, Rachel Adams called out ranges. 10,000 kilometers. 8,000. 6,000. The Swarm Mother was growing larger on the screen with every passing second. Her weapons began to fire. Massive biological cannons that sent streams of acid and energy toward the approaching ship. Evasive maneuvers, Lisa ordered. The Defiance twisted and turned, dodging attacks that would have destroyed smaller vessels instantly. The ship shook with near misses, alarms blaring throughout the hull. 4,000 kilometers. 3,000. Admiral. David's voice came through the communicator. The lance is charged and ready. Firing solution locked. Hold steady, Jake said, gripping his chair. We need to get closer. The Swarm Mother seemed to sense the danger. Bioships from across the battlefield began converging on the Defiance. The hive mind was focusing everything it had on stopping this one ship. Then something unexpected happened. Coalition vessels began appearing around the Defiance. The Lauren cruisers, Kovathi battleships, ships from a dozen species that had been hiding behind human lines. They threw themselves at the incoming bioships, their weapons blazing. What are they doing? Emma asked, eyes wide. A transmission came through. Admiral Vexenar's voice, calm and steady. Admiral Morrison, 300 years ago, we failed you. We pushed you away because we were afraid. We watched you go into the darkness alone, and we told ourselves it was for the best. His voice grew stronger. We were wrong. We were cowards. But not today. Today, we fight beside you. Today, we remember what honor means. More coalition ships joined the battle. They were old and damaged, barely functional. But they fought with a fury that surprised everyone. They had watched the humans sacrifice themselves for strangers. They had seen what courage looked like. And they were ashamed of their fear. Elder Matriarch Sylvan's voice joined the channel. Humanity came to save us without asking for anything in return. The least we can do is help them finish the job. All Valoran ships, engage the enemy. Protect the human flagship at all costs. The space around the Defiance became a storm of fire and debris. Coalition ships died by the dozens, but they took swarm bioships with them. For the first time in weeks, The coalition was not running. They were fighting. 2,000 kilometers, Rachel reported. 1,000. The swarm mother filled the entire view screen now. Up close, she was even more terrifying. Her surface was covered with scars from ancient battles, with the absorbed remains of civilizations she had consumed. Eyes of all shapes and sizes dotted her flesh, watching the approaching ship with cold hunger. "Admiral," Lisa said quietly, "we are in range." Jake Morrison looked at his crew one last time. Michael Torres, young and brave. Rachel Adams, calm and steady. Emma Wright, determined and loyal. Lisa Park, his right hand for 20 years. "It has been an honor serving with all of you," he said. "The honor is ours, sir," Lisa replied. Jake took a deep breath. "Fire the Nova Lance." David Stone pressed the button. A beam of white light erupted from the Defiance, punching through the swarm mother's shields like they were made of paper. The energy struck her flesh, and something terrible began to happen. Chain reaction spread across her surface. Organic matter ignited from within. The swarm mother screamed, a sound that echoed across every frequency in existence. The hive mind felt its queen dying and panicked. Across the battlefield, bioships stopped attacking. They became confused, uncoordinated, lost without the consciousness that united them. But the Nova Lance's detonation was expanding. The chain reaction was growing larger with every second, threatening to consume everything nearby. "All hands, brace for impact." Jake shouted. The explosion came. White light filled the view screen. The Defiance was thrown backward like a toy, spinning wildly through space. Decks collapsed. Fires erupted. Crew members were tossed against walls and floors. Then silence. Jake opened his eyes slowly. He was lying on the floor of the bridge, surrounded by debris and smoke. Emergency lights flickered weakly. Pain shot through his body from a dozen wounds. "Report," he croaked. "Is anyone alive?" Coughing sounds answered him. One by one, his crew responded. Lisa Park, bleeding from a head wound. Michael Torres, with a broken arm. Rachel Adams, bruised but conscious. Emma Wright, helping others to their feet. "Admiral," Lisa said, pointing at the view screen. Through the cracked glass, they could see the aftermath of the battle. Where the swarm mother had been, there was nothing but a spreading cloud of debris. The massive creature was gone, vaporized by the Nova Lance. And without their queen, the remaining swarm bioships were falling apart. They attacked each other in confusion, crashed into asteroids, or simply drifted without purpose. The hive mind was broken. "We did it," Emma whispered. "We actually did it." The Defiance drifted slowly, powerless and damaged beyond repair. But around them, coalition ships were gathering. Rescue teams were being launched. Medical vessels were approaching. A transmission came through, full of static but understandable. "USS Defiance, this is Admiral Vexenar. We are coming to get you." "Hold on." Jake Morrison leaned back against a broken console and allowed himself a small smile. The ship was destroyed. His body was broken. But they had won. Humanity had returned, and they had saved the galaxy. Through the cracked view screen, he could see Valoran Prime. The planet was still there. The fires were still burning, but the darkness was not spreading anymore. The people down there would survive. The children would grow up. The future would continue. That was all that mattered. "Admiral," Lisa said weakly, "what do we do now?" Jake thought about the question. He thought about the long journey home. He thought about the conversations that would need to happen, the alliances that would need to be built, the wounds that would need to heal. "Now," he said, "we rest. Tomorrow we rebuild. And someday we teach the galaxy what we have always known." "What is that, sir?" Jake closed his eyes. "That hope is never foolish. That courage is never wasted. And that helping others Even those who hurt you is always the right choice. Outside, the stars shone bright and clear. The darkness had been pushed back, and humanity had lit the way. 1 month had passed since the Battle of Valorum Prime. The galaxy was still healing. Burned worlds were being rebuilt. Refugee fleets were returning home. And in the Great Hall of the Coalition Council, history was about to be made. Admiral Jake Morrison stood outside the massive doors, adjusting his uniform with his good hand. His other arm was still in a sling, recovering from injuries sustained during the battle. The doctors had wanted him to rest longer, but he had refused. This was too important. Commander Lisa Parks stood beside him, her head bandaged from her own wounds. "Are you ready, Admiral?" Jake took a deep breath. "No, but when has that ever stopped us?" The doors opened, and they walked into the council chamber. The room was enormous, built to hold representatives from hundreds of species. Today, it was packed. Every seat was filled with delegates who had traveled from across the galaxy to witness this moment. The air was thick with tension and anticipation. Jake walked down the central aisle, feeling countless eyes upon him. He recognized some faces in the crowd. Admiral Vexinar, who had led the coalition charge during the final battle. Elder Matriarch Sylvan, who had watched her world nearly burn. Survivors and leaders from species humanity had never met before. He reached the speaker's platform and turned to face the assembly. 300 years ago, he began, his voice steady and clear. A human ambassador stood where I am standing now. Her name was Catherine Bell, and she came to ask for one simple thing: friendship, a chance for humanity to prove its worth. He paused, letting the words sink in. You refused. You called us primitive. You called us emotional. You called us a danger to ourselves and others. And so, we left. We walked into the darkness alone, and we did not look back. Silence filled the chamber. Some delegates lowered their eyes in shame. For 300 years, the galaxy believed humanity was extinct. You thought we had destroyed ourselves, just as you predicted. But you were wrong. During those silent centuries, we did not destroy ourselves. We built. We grew. We became something new. Jake gestured toward the viewport, where human ships could be seen patrolling alongside coalition vessels. We developed technologies you cannot imagine. Weapons that reshape reality itself. Ships that can cross the galaxy in days instead of months. We could have used these tools to conquer you. We could have returned as conquerors, taking revenge for the humiliation we suffered. He shook his head slowly. But that is not who we are. That is not what humanity stands for. We did not spend 300 years preparing for war. We spent them preparing for this moment. The moment when the galaxy would need us. The moment when we could prove that Catherine Bell was right all along. His voice grew stronger. You asked us why we came. Why we would sacrifice our lives for species that rejected us. The answer is simple. We are human. We form bonds with those we have never met. We fight for people we will never know. We carry hope into darkness, not because we expect gratitude, but because it is right. Jake looked at the assembled delegates, meeting their eyes one by one. I am not here to demand an apology. I am not here to ask for payment or praise. I am here because the galaxy stands at a crossroads. The swarm is defeated, but the galaxy is wounded. It will take all of us working together to heal those wounds and build something better. He straightened his shoulders, ignoring the pain from his injuries. 300 years ago, you told humanity we were not ready to stand among you. Perhaps you were right. We were young. We were reckless. But we never stopped growing. We never stopped believing that the stars were meant to be shared. And now, we are ready. He took a final deep breath. The legendary Armada has returned. And this time, we are here to stay. Not as your saviors. Not as your servants. But as your equals. Your partners. Your friends. He stepped back from the platform. For a long moment, the chamber was silent. Then Elder Matriarch Sylvan rose from her seat. She walked slowly toward the platform, her ancient body trembling with each step. When she reached Jake, she stopped and looked up at him with her 4 silver eyes. "Admiral Morrison," she said, her voice carrying across the silent chamber, "I have lived for 1,000 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have witnessed great deeds and terrible crimes. But I have never seen anything like what your people did at Valoran Prime." She reached out and took his hand. "On behalf of the Valoran people, and on behalf of every species that watched you fight for strangers, I want to say something that should have been said 300 years ago." Her voice cracked with emotion. "Thank you. And I am sorry. We were wrong about humanity. We were so very wrong." Jake squeezed her hand gently. "Elder, the past is past. What matters now is the future. Will you help us build it?" Sylvan smiled. It was strange to see such an expression on a Valoran face, but it was genuine. "I believe," she said. "That can be arranged." The chamber erupted into applause. Delegates from hundreds of species rose to their feet, cheering and calling out. Some were crying. Others were laughing. All were united in something that had not existed in the coalition for a very long time. Hope. 6 months later, the USS Defiance II launched from the orbital shipyards above Earth. The new flagship was larger, more powerful, and more beautiful than its predecessor. It carried the same name as a reminder of the sacrifice that had saved the galaxy. Admiral Jake Morrison sat in the captain's chair, fully recovered from his injuries. Around him, his crew had returned. Lisa Park at Tactical, Michael Torres at Communications, Rachel Adams at Navigation, Emma Wright managing operations. Even Chief Engineer David Stone was aboard, already working on his next impossible invention. Jason Black had been promoted to captain and given command of his own ship. But his Hellcats still flew alongside the Defiance whenever they could. "Admiral," Rachel said. Looking up from her console, the Valoran and Korvathi vessels are reporting ready. Ambassador Sylvan sends her regards and asks when we plan to depart. Jake smiled. Things had changed so much in 6 months. Humanity had been given a permanent seat on the Coalition Council. Trade routes were opening between Earth and dozens of worlds. Cultural exchanges had begun, with humans traveling to alien planets and aliens visiting Earth. It was not perfect. There were still tensions, still old wounds that needed healing. Some species still feared humanity, worried about what these strange, emotional creatures might do next. But for the first time in 300 years, humans were not alone. "Signal the fleet," Jake ordered. "All ships, prepare to move out." "Yes, sir." "Where are we heading?" Jake looked at the stars through the viewport. The same stars his ancestors had watched from a small blue planet, dreaming of the day they would finally reach them. "Our first mission is a joint patrol with our new allies. After that, we are exploring the outer rim. There are still swarm remnants out there, lost bioships causing trouble. We are going to clean them up and make sure the galaxy is safe." He leaned back in his chair, feeling a sense of peace he had not experienced in a very long time. "And after that?" "Everywhere, Lieutenant. We are going everywhere. The galaxy is bigger than anyone can imagine, and there are wonders out there waiting to be discovered. Humanity spent 300 years in the dark. Now it is time to spread some light." The fleet moved into formation. Human ships flew alongside Valoran cruisers and Korvathi battleships. Different species, different cultures, different histories. All united by a common purpose. Michael Torres looked up from his console with a small smile. "Admiral, I am receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. News agencies, civilian channels, even government broadcasts. Everyone is talking about us. They are calling this the beginning of a new era. What are they calling it? Lisa asked. The Age of Unity. Some are even calling it the Human Era. Jake shook his head. It is not about us. It never was. It is about everyone working together. Make sure our allies know that. Yes, sir. Rachel Adams plotted the course, her hands moving smoothly over the controls. Course laid in, Admiral. Ready on your command. Jake Morrison looked at his crew. These people had stood beside him through the darkest moments. They had risked everything for a galaxy that had once rejected them. And now, they were ready to do it all over again. All ships, he said, his voice carrying across the fleet-wide channel. This is Admiral Morrison. 300 years ago, we left the galaxy in silence. Today, we return in friendship. Let us show the universe what we can accomplish together. Engage engines. Let us make history. The legendary Armada accelerated toward the stars. Behind them, Earth shone blue and beautiful, a reminder of where they came from. Ahead of them, the galaxy stretched out in infinite possibility, a promise of what they could become. Humanity had come home at last. Not to a place, but to a purpose. To protect. To explore. To hope. And this time, they were not alone. Far below, on a planet called Earth, children looked up at the night sky. They saw the distant lights of human ships flying alongside alien vessels. They saw proof that the universe was not empty, that somewhere out there, amazing things were happening, and they dreamed of the day when they, too, would reach the stars. The story was not ending. It was just beginning.